Hello. So I just wanted to talk to you today about student finance and the student accommodation sector. Hopefully it might help you to understand why people might not be giving or offering refunds, why people are offering refunds, and we'll see. Firstly, if you are going to university next year, and especially if it's going to be your first year in September, please make sure you apply for student finance. Make sure you get it done very soon, because even if you don't have your place secured, you can still go through the process of having student finance in place, and you can decline it later on down the stage. What you can't do is start applying for finance when it's too late. And even then, due to the limited resources most of these places have, everything's going to take a lot longer. So please have patience. They will sort you out. They will get you sorted. And it just might take them a little bit longer than usual. So moving on to the student accommodation and different types there are in the sector. So to list them, there is uni-owned. So this is where the university owns and manages its own accommodation. There is purpose-built student accommodation. And within that you can have management companies that will own and or manage the big blocks. And you can have letting agents who manage landlords' properties, which are specific for students. And then you have just landlords. And they will probably have 1, 2, 3, 4 student properties, and that's what they've built their cash up for and invested in. So to start with university owned, these are normally on campus or very close to the campus. They're the big blocks and contain studios, which are living by itself, flats and apartments, which is more than one, so 2, 3, 4, 5. Each usually have an ensuite, shared kitchen and a shared living room. And most first years go into there. However, you can stay on as a second and a third year, or even fourth year if you are. However, the first years get a priority because they are new to the university, they are new to the city, and they'll be surrounded by other first years. Moving on to purpose-built student accommodation. So these are the big tower blocks similar to university owned. They'll also contain studios, they'll contain 2 beds, they'll contain flats and apartments, they'll contain penthouses, deluxe studios, all that kind of stuff. Now, there is a crossover though. So some of these purpose-built accommodation providers are on university campuses. So for instance, if universities have its own accommodation, one of these providers might provide it for them, which means the university doesn't own the accommodation, but it might allocate students to this purpose-built student accommodation. And this is where the confusion can be. So you might think that because the university has allocated you space in this block, that it's university accommodation. However, it might be managed and owned by a different company. These sort of companies might have multiple sites. Some are growing, so they start with 1 and go to 2, go to 3, go to 4, and some are quite big. These are usually backed by big investors, big pension funds, or banks, wherever that money may come from. People do invest in these in student accommodation for a return. So if someone is not giving you a refund, it means that they still have the cost to supply for the mortgage, and they've got to pay staff, which is a big thing. They've got to pay cleaners at the minute. They've got all the facilities inside, and all your toilet roll, your soaps, your hand sanitizers, the food if you get that included. That is what the cost is going to at the minute. And then if we drop down onto letting agents, so letting agents usually look after a landlord's house. So for instance, say I saved a pot of money, I bought a house and I'm turned it into a student house, and then I give it to a letting agent and they look after it and they manage it. So they'll deal with the moving in, the repairs, they'll probably refurb it in the summer, and then they'll let it back out the following year. And they might do this for however many houses, could be 200, 300, 400 houses. So quite a big ask. Normally second and third years, fourth years go into these. The rent in the houses are cheaper than the purpose-built student accommodation, usually. And that's where, as I say, the second and third years go. Each house they're usually located further out from the university, and if they are close to the university, it's likely you will pay a premium for it. Dropping down again onto landlords. These are your type of people that usually have one or two houses. It's not a business. Well, it could be a business, but it's not really a business. They do it because they've saved up some money and they put it into a house and now they rent it to students. You usually have direct contact with these people, so any repairs you go to the landlord. You don't go to the letting agent. If you live with a letting agent, it's unlikely that you will meet the landlord. And the landlord will have it or be working, will have it as an investment. They will buy it, and that might be their pension pot. That might be what they're going to live off once they retire, and they're usually still working at this time. And so please don't get the two confused between landlord and letting agent. The landlord is it is sort of a business. They do have to manage it like a business, but it's very personal. You have direct contact with the landlord. They will look after the repairs, they will look after getting you into the property, they will look after getting you out of the property, they will look after your deposits, they do everything. Whereas the letting agents, they will do it for the landlord, and you might not necessarily see the landlord. I know refunds is a big topic at the minute, and I think what we should do is create a win-win situation. This is just my opinion. Again, it's not gospel, please don't take it as that. But I think we could look at a 50-50 situation where we create a win-win. Obviously, a lot of students can't pay their full rent because the living loan or maintenance loan doesn't offer enough for it. That's not their fault. If they physically can't pay their rent, they can't pay their rent. And I'm hoping letting agents and landlords and providers are offering some sort of hardship policy for this. It might be a deferred payment. So what it is, they might say, right, you can have X amount at a reduced rate or not pay anything, and then when you get working again, you can pay little bits off later, or, we can knock bills off at this time, etc. Something like that. Please don't think that just because they're not offering you a refund is they're doing it out of spite because they want all the money. Take purpose-built student accommodation, for example. It's likely that there's a lot of international students in there, and these companies are still having to employ and pay people to be in there, and they are key workers because the international students can't get home and they need somewhere to live. If they shut down because they run out of money, then where do they go? So they have to stay in there, they have to keep the facilities open. Letting agents normally don't have the cash flow of the bigger providers. So, if they're offering refunds, it might hurt them a lot. And they might not be able to sustain all those refunds going out for their business, and then that means that whoever has a job there is likely to be furloughed. So please be considerate. I'm sure everyone is trying their best to help you out. There are lots of letting agents doing really great things in terms of this whole coronavirus, and they're checking up on students and doing what they can to help you. But please be mindful, and letting agents, if you can help the students or you can help them in any way, please do, but hopefully that gives you some clarity on the different types of accommodation that are within the student sector. So just to recap, there's uni-owned, and this is where the university owns and manages it. It looks after itself, you have direct contact with the university. There's purpose-built student accommodation, and this is where it is owned and managed by a private company. Some accommodation on university campus is privately owned, so don't get confused. If your contract goes to a management company, it usually means it's privately owned, so worth checking on your tenancy. There's private renting, so letting agents and just letting agents. That's where you go through an agency, and then there's landlords where you have direct contact with the landlord. I don't know how I managed to make this last for 9 minutes. However, hope you enjoy it. And if you have any questions, any queries, just direct message me and we'll have a chat.